This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. It's Friday, May 31st, 2024. I'm Clayton Neville in for John Trout. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
What's next for former President Donald Trump after he's found guilty on all counts?
This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge.
I'm Pamela Furr.
Reaction to the Trump verdict is pouring in.
We have to be willing to fight back.
I'm John Stolnis.
The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court says no to Senate Democrats. We'll have the details.
Health officials in Michigan say a third farm worker has been diagnosed with bird flu. I'm Jackie Quinn.
On Wall Street, the final day of May trading is here, and it's all about the latest on inflation that comes this morning. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
A mass shooting in Minneapolis, and a man was caught driving with a suspended license on video by the judge. We'll have that story. All ahead on America in the Morning. For the first time in American history, a former president of the United States walks out of a New York courtroom a convicted felon. Pamela Furr breaks down what happened in the Donald Trump hush money trial.
A jury found him guilty of falsifying business records in what prosecutors say was a scheme to illegally influence the 2016 election through hush money payments to a porn actor who said the two had sex. Trump, after leaving the courtroom, took a few minutes to speak with the press.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area.
2 days of jury deliberations, with the Trump team vowing to appeal the conviction.
We will fight for our Constitution. This is long from over.
Now, each count carries a maximum prison sentence of 4 years, so that means Trump is facing 136 years behind bars. Now, most legal experts do not believe the judge will go that far. However, the former president is set for sentencing July 11th, just days before Republicans are set to select him as the 2024 nominee. Now, keep in mind, there are also 3 more criminal cases with far more serious prison time attached. Those cases have gotten bogged down by appeals and other legal fights, so it's unclear whether any of those will go to trial before the November election. Trump saying that's where the real judgment comes, from the American people.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people.
Speaking of the election, it should be noted this conviction does not bar Trump from continuing his campaign or becoming president, and he can still vote for himself in his home state of Florida. That is, as long as he stays out of prison in New York State. I'm Pamela Furr.
Lawmakers and pundits are reacting to the guilty verdict for former President Trump. John Stolnis has reaction on who's saying what.
This actually erodes the confidence that Americans have in the justice system. Unbelievable. Unfreaking believable.
Republican Senator Tim Scott, believed to be a favorite to be Trump's running mate, taking to social media to blast the verdict. Fellow Republican Senator Ted Cruz outraged on Fox News.
I am both furious and heartbroken at the same time. I'm furious at what we saw, but I'm also heartbroken for the rule of law. I'm heartbroken for our justice system.
Senator J.D. Vance on Fox says Congress should call Judge Juan Merchan and his daughter before congressional hearings.
We have to be willing to fight back. We need to be subpoenaing Judge Merchan and his daughter. We need to understand what are the connections between big Democratic money and this sham prosecution.
Some Republicans, like Senator Marco Rubio on Fox, warning that this trial and verdict sets a precedent for weaponizing the legal system moving forward.
Democrats have crossed this line. They have crossed the line in which now the court system is a political weapon, and it's going to be very hard for it not to come back the other way.
Democrats, of course, singing a different tune. Congressman Jamie Raskin asked on CNN whether Trump should go to jail.
I don't take joy in people being sent to jail and going through that kind of suffering. It's conservatives like Donald Trump who, called for the death penalty against some innocent young men in New York and who want to lock everybody up, including Hillary Clinton. That's not the way I feel.
The prosecution's star witness, Michael Cohen, asked on MSNBC if he's surprised by the verdict.
No, I was not. The facts speak for themselves. The documents speak for themselves.
The Biden campaign urging supporters not to lose focus. Communications Director Michael Tyler in a statement saying the verdict, quote, does not change the fact that the American people face a simple reality. There is still only one way to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office, at the ballot box. Convicted felon or not, Trump will be the Republican nominee for president. I'm John Stolnis.
Those are the top stories of the day, sponsored by Sleep Number. Save 50% on the Sleep Number limited edition smart bed for a limited time only at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com. Some concerns this morning after a dairy farmer is found with bird flu. We'll tell you where when America in the Morning returns. Stay with us. Closing out the month of May this morning and heading into the weekend with rain in the forecast in some parts of the U.S. LaTroy Thornton's with us. LaTroy, which areas are going to get most wet?
In the east, look for pleasant and dry conditions today under sprawling high pressure. A chilly start to the day in many spots will lead to widespread sunshine for the most part, along with comfortably low humidity for many from the mid-Atlantic to the northeast. Generally dry and sunny conditions look to hold up through Saturday and perhaps even much of Sunday closer to the coast, but the next arriving storm will increase the risk for showers to end the weekend for the interior. Much of the west should remain similarly dry today beneath somewhat weaker high pressure. However, a new storm does return the chance for showers to parts of Washington state by Saturday morning, before a more potent storm means that steadier rain is more likely instead, including parts of Oregon and even northern Idaho on Sunday. The majority of the remaining western states should stay dry for much of the weekend. The more active pattern continues in the midsection of the country, with two separate storms making for wet weather in the plains and the Midwest today. The stronger southern storm is expected to produce two distinct areas with the potential for severe thunderstorms today, as hail, damaging wind gusts, and some tornadoes may occur, both in the southern high plains and within a zone from eastern Texas to southwestern Missouri. Showers and thunderstorms stretch northward into eastern Nebraska and parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin as well, but it should stay dry across the Great Lakes. The northern storm, focused mainly over Canada, may bring a stray late-day thunderstorm to northeastern Montana and northwestern North Dakota today. In Oklahoma City, early rain and thunder give way to more heavy thunderstorms in the afternoon with a high of 75. In Tucson, Arizona, look for sunshine and a high of 102. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
Remember to follow us everywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. Chief Justice John Roberts is rejecting a request from Senate Democrats to discuss Supreme Court ethics and the controversy over flags that flew outside Justice Samuel Alito's homes. Washington correspondent Sagar Meghani reports.
Chief Justice John Roberts is rejecting a request from some Senate Democrats to discuss Supreme Court ethics and the controversy over flags that flew outside Justice Samuel Alito's homes. The flags are like those carried by Capitol rioters. Two Senate Judiciary Committee Democrats asked Roberts for the meeting a week ago and wanted him to ensure that Alito recused himself from any high court cases concerning the riot or Donald Trump's bids to overturn his election loss. Roberts declined the meeting and noted justices decide for themselves when to step aside from cases. Alito told House and Senate lawmakers he will not recuse. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
There are concerns in the Midwest this morning after a third case of bird flus detected in a dairy farm worker. Correspondent Jackie Quinn reports.
Michigan health officials say this person developed respiratory symptoms at a Michigan dairy farm. The two previous human cases, one at a different farm in Michigan and the other in Texas, produced only mild eye symptoms. While there is some concern about the virus jumping species, food microbiology expert Leanne Jacobs at North Carolina State University has told us consumers shouldn't be worried about catching it from milk because supplies are screened.
Even if there was a small amount that went into the raw milk, it would be diluted out because you're mixing milk from many, many different cows. And thirdly, really most importantly, is that we pasteurize our milk.
Michigan's health department is telling farm workers they should be using protective equipment to prevent catching bird flu from livestock. I'm Jackie Quinn.
The housing market in America, certainly not the best it's ever been, but there are still some finds out there. We'll have Friday Business when America in the Morning returns. Don't go anywhere. The Business Report sponsored by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments takes a disciplined approach with investing, helping clients navigate volatile markets. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger with Friday Business.
Wall Street opens this morning for the final day of May trading. Investors are waiting for the latest on inflation. That'll be out this morning. The Dow tanked 330 points yesterday on disappointing results from Salesforce, but the major averages are still on pace for a winning month. The PCE out at 8:30 Eastern today, the personal consumption expenditures measure of inflation.
The PCE, the inflation data, we're optimistic at Carson Group. We're going to start to see continued improvement on inflation, better inflation data this Friday.
The Carson Group's Ryan Dietrich on CNBC. Last night after the closing bell on Wall Street, Dell shares tanked more than 10% on disappointing results. We got mixed results from Nordstrom. Gap knocked it out of the park, blowing past estimates. Ulta Beauty with strong results, but it lowered its outlook for the rest of the year. Costco with a solid quarter, but shares were ticking lower after hours. Dollar Tree bought the North American IP rights of 99 cents only. The rights to 170 of those stores, the leases. Retail Dive says those locations could reopen as Dollar Tree locations as early as this fall. CNBC's travel reporter Seema Modi pushing back on news reports you may have heard yesterday that cruise lines are cutting prices for summer sailings.
Some of that actually has to do with cancellations related to Red Sea and some of the geopolitical conflict that we're seeing in that region. So I wouldn't put too much into that. Of course, now any type of dislocation that we see in pricing in the coming weeks and months will be critical for an industry that so far has been able to keep pricing power. And one of the reasons is because of this wealthier demographic paying up for that experience.
She notes that baby boomers, people 55 and older, have been the ones happily paying higher prices for cruise vacations.
Jessica, what are the hidden gems in the crummy housing market right now?
You know, we just got pending home sales numbers. They tanked in April, but there are two glimmers of hope. If you or someone you know is looking to buy a home, turns out a lot of people selling homes have hit a tipping point after pricing their homes too high.
Redfin said the share of sellers doing price cuts hit 6.4%, and that is the highest level since 2022. The median asking price also dropped for the first time in 6 months.
CNBC's Diana Olick. On today's watch list, it is the final day of May trading. We do get new inflation data, no big earnings reports. We'll get the latest on personal income and spending, new in theaters, Roadside Comedy Summer Camp, and Crunchyroll's animated Haikyuu dumpster battle. This is the first Friday that's considered a summer Friday for a lot of people who work in offices. Companies often let people out early every Friday between Memorial Day and Labor Day.
A police officer dead this morning after a mass shooting in Minnesota. We'll have the details when America in the Morning returns after this. A mass shooting in Minneapolis has left 3 people dead, including a police officer. Officials report gunfire erupted inside an apartment building where police responded. 2 officers arrived and both were shot. One of them was killed and the other rushed to a nearby hospital. A person inside the apartment building also killed, so was the shooter. 3 other people injured. Minneapolis police expected to hold a news conference sometime today to update the situation. Hyundai and 2 other firms in Alabama have been accused of child labor violations. Correspondent Norman Hall reports.
The Labor Department wants a federal judge to prevent Hyundai and 2 other Alabama companies from what the government contends is illegal employment of children. The complaint follows an investigation by the department's Wage and Hour Division that found a 13-year-old worked between 50 and 60 hours a week, operating machines on an assembly line that forms sheet metal into auto body parts. The defendants include Hyundai Labor Manufacturing Alabama, LLC, Smart Alabama, LLC, and Best Practice Service, LLC.
The lawsuit said it seeks to end the use of child labor and required that the companies give up profits linked to the alleged practice. I'm Norman Hall.
A virtual court hearing is going viral this morning after a suspended driver joined the court from the road.
Mr. Harris, are you driving?
Actually, I'm pulling into my doctor's office, actually. So just give me 1 second. I'm parking right now.
You stationary?
I'm pulling in right now at this second. Yes, I am.
The judge in Ann Arbor, Michigan, was a bit confused as he saw Corey Harris, who has a suspended license, behind the wheel.
So maybe I don't understand something. This is a driving while license suspended?
That is correct, Your Honor.
And he was just driving, and he didn't have a license.
Oh. It started to come together for Harris, who was then blindsided with a tough reality.
I don't even know why he would do that. So defendant's bond is revoked in this matter. Defendant is to turn himself into the Washington County Jail by 6 p.m. today. Failure to turn himself in will result in a bench warrant with no bond.
Harris's reaction. Harris has another hearing next week. Again, history made in a New York court where former President Donald Trump was found guilty of 34 counts in his hush money trial. Stay tuned to this radio station for updates. America in the Morning for Friday, May 31st, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay, senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm Clayton Neville in for John Trout, and this is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm Clayton Neville in for John Trout. Here's what's coming up this half hour.
Former President Donald Trump has been convicted on all 34 counts in his hush money trial. I'm Julie Walker.
Donald Trump is now the first former American president to be convicted of felony crimes. I'm Norman Hall.
Boeing has told federal regulators how it plans to fix aircraft safety. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
An Idaho jury has convicted Chad Daybell of killing his wife and his 2 stepchildren. I'm Sue Aller.
Federal regulators are allowing Amazon to travel longer distances with its delivery drones. I'm Jackie Quinn.
TikTok splitting code to remove Chinese influence, but not likely before the deadline. I'm Chuck Palm.
Back after these messages. Just one more day to go in the month of May. Hard to believe tomorrow's June 1st. Eventually, it'll start to warm up across America. Not everywhere quite yet, though. LaTroy Thornton's with us. LaTroy, how long will these cooler conditions last in the east?
A pair of disturbances will keep the plains and the Midwest active through the beginning of this weekend. Today, the core of the more potent storm will drift across Oklahoma toward parts of Arkansas and Missouri. This feature should spawn 2 separate zones of severe thunderstorms today, with hail, localized damaging wind gusts, and isolated tornadoes possible both in the southern High Plains and from East Texas to far southeastern Kansas. The risk for more general showers and thunderstorms extends northward from there through eastern Nebraska into southern Minnesota, with rain reaching northwestern Wisconsin as well, but drier conditions east of there across the Great Lakes. The second storm, a broader storm focused mainly over Canada, brings the chance for a spotty late day or perhaps even early evening thunderstorm to areas of northeastern Montana and northwestern North Dakota before it lifts across the upper Midwest into Saturday. Another somewhat active zone looks to emerge in the Florida Peninsula today as temperatures back off from exceptionally hot conditions. Afternoon thunderstorms may develop, especially on the Gulf side of the state, with cities such as Naples and Tampa potentially in line for a downpour to end the day. For both the west and the east, we can expect rather dry conditions to dominate the end of the work week beneath broad zones of high pressure. In the east, a chilly start to the day for many gives way to a pleasant Friday with low humidity from the mid-Atlantic into the Ohio Valley and the Northeast. The western United States should stay mainly dry until the next storm brings showers to Washington early Saturday, then a larger swath of rain for much of the Northwest on Sunday. That's the weather across America. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
Remember to follow us everywhere you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. In a historic decision, a jury in New York City found Donald Trump guilty of all 34 counts in his hush money trial, becoming the first former president to be convicted of felony crimes. As correspondent Julie Walker reports, Trump attorneys immediately planned to appeal the verdict, and the former president had a lot to say after he left the courtroom.
We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now.
Former President Donald Trump has been convicted on all 34 counts in his hush money trial. Leaving court, Trump had this to say.
I think it's just a disgrace, and we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end, and we'll win, because our country's gone to hell. We don't have the same country anymore. We have a divided mess. We're a nation in decline, serious decline. Millions and millions of people pouring into our country right now, from prisons and from mental institutions, terrorists.
Trump was sitting stone-faced with his eyes looking down as the verdict finished being read, then began slowly looking around the room and glanced at the jury, still expressionless, as they affirmed they found him guilty on all counts.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area.
Bail was not required, and Trump was released on his own recognizance. The judge has set his sentencing for July 11th, just days before Republicans are set to select him as their 2024 nominee.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people.
At criminal court in Manhattan, I'm Julie Walker.
Judge Juan Merchan set a sentencing date for Donald Trump as July 11th. That's just days before the start of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. Outside the courtroom, there were shouting matches on the street between those who backed Donald Trump and those against him. The former president claimed the trial was rigged when he addressed the media outside the courthouse. Correspondent Norman Hall reports that falsifying business records charges carry up to 4 years in prison, but it's not clear if Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg would seek jail time. It's also not clear if the judge would impose a jail term on a man running for president.
Today, we have the most important voice of all, and that's the voice of the jurors. They have spoken. Donald J. Trump has been convicted of 34 counts of falsifying business records.
A New York jury found him guilty of all 34 charges in a scheme to illegally influence the 2016 election through a hush money payment to a porn actor who said the two had sex.
Their deliberations led them to a unanimous conclusion, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the defendant, Donald J. Trump, is guilty of 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree to conceal a scheme to corrupt the 2016 election.
Trump said afterward that the trial was rigged.
This is a very sad day for America. The whole world is watching, and it's a very sad day for New York. I've gone through 2 of these trials already.
Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg said he and prosecutors simply did their jobs.
I did my job. We did our job. Many voices out there. The only voice that matters is the voice of the jury, and the jury has spoken.
Bragg refused to comment on sentencing.
While this defendant may be unlike any other in American history, we arrived at this trial and ultimately today at this verdict in the same manner as every other case that comes through the courtroom doors.
Judge Juan Merchan has set sentencing for July 11th, just days before the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. I'm Norman Hall.
Under the government microscope for a series of failures to its 737 MAX airplanes, Boeing has laid out its plans for correcting aircraft safety and quality problems that have plagued the company since the 2 MAX crashes in 2018 and 2019 killed 346 people. Washington correspondent Sagar Meghani reports that the FAA told Boeing it'll likely be months before it can be cleared to ramp up production of its most popular passenger jet.
The FAA required Boeing to come up with a plan after one of its planes suffered a fuselage panel blowout in January. Boeing leaders told regulators how they'll fix things.
Our goal is to make sure that Boeing makes the necessary changes and has the right tools in place to sustain those changes. Boeing has laid out their roadmap, and now they need to execute.
The FAA limited production of the 737 MAX, Boeing's best-selling plane after the Alaska Air incident, and Administrator Mike Whitaker says the cap will stay in place until the agency is satisfied Boeing's making progress.
We underscored that they must follow through on implementing corrective actions and transform their safety culture. This is a guide for a new way for Boeing to do business. The FAA will make sure that Boeing makes lasting changes using all the tools at their disposal.
Whitaker says the FAA now has more inspectors inside Boeing and Spirit Aerosystems plants.
Bottom line, we will continue to make sure every airplane that comes off the line is safe and reliable.
Sagar Meghani, Washington.
There's support from a growing number of world leaders over potentially letting Ukraine strike Russian soil. So where does the U.S. stand on that? We'll tell you when America in the Morning returns. Stay with us. An Idaho jury has found Chad Daybell guilty of all charges in a murder case involving religious beliefs, an affair, and the deaths of his first wife and the children of his second. Sue Aller reports.
With no emotion, Chad Daybell, called the Doomsday Prophet because of his religious beliefs, stood before a judge as the verdict was read, guilty on all murder charges and insurance fraud in the deaths of his first wife, Tammy Daybell, and the deaths of his current wife, Lori Vallow's youngest children, 7-year-old Joshua J.J. Vallow and 16-year-old Tylee Ryan. The jury deliberated for just 6 hours. Idaho prosecutors said in September of 2019, the couple buried the children in Daybell's backyard and killed Daybell's first wife, Tammy. Originally, her death was considered to be from natural causes, but later determined to be a homicide. Throughout the 7-week trial, witnesses testified that Daybell and Vallow labeled people who stood in their way as zombies and dark spirits. On court TV, the judge talked about the sentencing phase.
Because the defendant has been convicted on counts of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, the state has filed a notice of intent to seek the death penalty.
Vallow was previously found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. I'm Sue Aller.
There are reports this morning that President Biden gave Ukraine permission to strike inside of Russia using U.S.-made weapons as the conflict between Kyiv and the Kremlin continues to drag on. And as Russia ramps up its offensive, more global leaders are considering the idea of Ukrainians launching Western weapons on Russian soil.
We're committed to Ukraine succeeding as a country. We're committed to Ukraine winning the war. And I think we've shown that through the support that we've provided and many other countries have provided.
In Moldova this week, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken ultimately said it was up to Ukraine what they do with the weapons that they're given.
We haven't encouraged or enabled strikes outside of Ukraine. But Ukraine, as I've said before, has to make its own decisions about the best way to effectively defend itself. We're going to make sure that it has the equipment it needs to do that.
The head of NATO and the French president among world leaders encouraging a policy that would let Ukraine hit military targets on Russian soil. There is some pushback on that, though. Italy's foreign minister insists that any weapons his country has sent to Kyiv should not be used on Russian territory. As the years-long war rages, Blinken stressing this week what he called the need to adapt.
As the conditions have changed, as the battlefield has changed, as what Russia does has changed in terms of how it's pursuing its aggression, escalation, we've adapted and adjusted to, and I'm confident we'll continue to do that.
Last month, Congress passed a $61 billion aid package that Blinken says is now having a real effect. Asian nations keeping a watchful eye on North Korea following their last missile barrage into eastern waters. Correspondent Karen Shamus reports.
The missile barrage came days after the North unsuccessfully attempted to launch a military reconnaissance satellite. Speaking to reporters, Japan's Prime Minister, Fumio Kishida, said that the suspected missiles were believed to have landed in waters outside of Japan's exclusive economic zone. Kishida also said Tokyo strongly condemned the launches. He added they were in violation of UN Security Council resolutions against the North. I'm Karen Shamas.
It's a bird, it's a plane, it's Amazon. Correspondent Jackie Quinn reports the internet retail giant has been given permission to expand its drone delivery fleet.
Amazon says it's gotten permission from the Federal Aviation Administration to operate drones beyond a visual line of sight. It removes a barrier to traveling longer distances now that Amazon submitted a strategy for detecting and avoiding obstacles in the air. The FAA says the approval is for Prime Air Delivery Service in College Station, Texas, where Amazon first introduced drone deliveries in 2022. Amazon says it plans to open another drone delivery site west of Phoenix, while it's closing a drone delivery site in San Joaquin County, California. I'm Jackie Quinn.
It appears ByteDance is beginning to work to remove the Chinese algorithm from TikTok, well before the April congressional ruling that they divest from its influence. Here's Chuck Palm with today's Tech News.
TikTok is apparently working on a clone of its recommendation algorithm for its 170 million U.S. users, and it may result in a version that operates completely independently of its Chinese parent. ByteDance had already begun to segment the code away from TikTok late last year, which predated the bill that forces the sale of U.S. TikTok operations right about the time it began gaining steam. Anonymous sources from inside TikTok said that once the code is split, it could lay the groundwork for a divestiture of U.S. assets, even though they have no plans currently to do so. After the story was published on Reuters, TikTok in a posting on X said that this story is misleading and factually inaccurate without specifying what was inaccurate. A Reuters spokesperson said that they stand behind their reporting. TikTok had previously commented that splitting millions of lines of code to remove ByteDance's Chinese influence could be virtually impossible in the time frame given. Tell us your thoughts at allthetoptech.tech. I'm Chuck Palm.
It's time for sports, brought to you by Untuck It. Get your Father's Day gifts at our 80-plus stores or untuckit.com. Untuck It shirts designed to be worn untucked.
The Dallas Mavericks are on their way to the NBA Finals. They drubbed the Timberwolves 124-103 in Minnesota to win the Western Conference Finals in 5 games. A 22-1 Mavs run from midway through the first quarter into the early second turned the game into a rout. Dallas led by as many as 36 points, which is what they got from both Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. The NBA Finals begin next Thursday night in Boston. The Celtics are the early favorite. NHL, the Florida Panthers are 1 win away from a return trip to the Stanley Cup Finals. They tripped the Rangers 3-2 in Game 5 in New York for a 3-2 series lead. Anton Lundell got the go-ahead goal.
It was huge, we just had chances after chances and just kept grinding.
The Panthers go for the clincher at home tomorrow night. Tonight, Game 5 in the West Final, the Oilers at the Stars tied 2-2. Baseball, the Yankees managed only 5 hits but beat the Angels 8-3. A 5-run seventh featured 2 bases-loaded walks and a bases-clearing triple by Juan Soto. Twins held off the Royals 7-6. Carlos Correa added a 3-run triple. Astros blanked the Mariners behind the 4-hit pitching of Spencer Arrighetti and the Arrighettios. Tigers shut out the Red Sox. Jack Flaherty and the Flares allowed just 2 hits. Mets nipped the Diamondbacks. New York has now beaten Arizona in 20 of their last 24 meetings. Nationals knocked off the Braves to take 3 of 4 in Atlanta. Brewers beat the Cubs to win 3 out of 4 in that series, and the Rays outlasted the A's in 12. French Open top seed and defending champion Novak Djokovic advances to the 3rd round in straight sets. Soccer, the UEFA Champions League final tomorrow in London. Borussia Dortmund and Real Madrid. And new U.S. women's coach Emma Walsh makes her debut in a friendly versus South Korea. That's Friday Sports.
A children's book about World War II, and the author, a well-known character from out of this world. We'll tell you who in America in the Morning returns after these messages. Star Trek actor George Takei is set to release a children's book about the World War II incarceration of Japanese Americans. Entertainment correspondent Margie Zaraletta reports.
George Takei's book, My Lost Freedom, is aimed at 6 to 9-year-olds to educate them about the incarceration of 120,000 Japanese Americans in the 1940s. Takei was about that age when he lived in 3 camps, the first at the Santa Anita racetrack in a stable.
My mother hated it, and we did too. I mean, stench of fish manure was overwhelming.
He says many Japanese American families did not talk about it because they felt shame when he feels the shame belongs to the government.
There are many young Japanese Americans today who know very little about their own family history because their parents didn't talk to them about it, or because of the shame they felt, they made light of it.
Takei says one of the reasons he created the book was because as a teen he could find no information in libraries about what happened. I'm Archie Zaraletta.
Heading to the theaters this weekend, there's a new movie out looking at parental challenges. Kevin Carr has a sneak peek at Ezra.
Leaving CGI creatures and high-octane action in the dust, a new film puts a spotlight on parenting challenges.
You know, the word autism comes from the Greek, in your own world. I don't want him in his own world. I want him in this world.
Ezra tells the story of a divorced couple struggling to raise their autistic son. Faced with uncertain medical treatment and tough educational choices, the situation is complicated by the father's unconventional job as a stand-up comic and a well-meaning but sometimes out-of-touch grandfather.
You want me to put him in a special needs school? Jenna knows I'm broke.
She knows you're still not over her. The man your age shouldn't be living with his father.
The cast does a fine job humanizing the complex situation, and director Tony Goldwyn seems comfortable in his wheelhouse of real-life relationship drama.
All I ever wanted was just to protect our boy.
I applaud the film for neither sensationalizing nor demonizing autism. It shows that the problem isn't the child as much as it is the adults. Whether it's strangers offering unsolicited advice, experts recommending conflicting solutions, or the parents themselves making their own bad decisions, the grown-ups can be the biggest problem.
Your son has been a danger to himself.
He's not dangerous. He's a challenge. Nobody wants to do the work.
This hard truth is the film's greatest strength and greatest weakness, because not everyone is ready to hear that truth.
You're fighting for something. You might have to suffer consequences, but it's worth it because you did it.
Relevant to many, but often frustratingly realistic to watch, Ezra gets 3.5 stand-up mics out of 5. I'm Kevin Carr, and that's the way I see it.
Again, history made in a New York court where former President Donald Trump was found guilty of 34 felony counts in his hush money trial. Stay tuned to this radio station for updates. America in the Morning for Friday, May 31st, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay, senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm Clayton Neville in for John Trout, and this is Westwood One.